All right, you asked for it. Here we go. What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. On this channel, we like to talk about all of the new movies, TV shows, and streaming projects. Today's film is Salaar, and I was able to watch KGF and review it last year, both parts, so I didn't know this was the same director. Frankly, didn't know a lot about this movie, but a lot of people have been requesting it. I looked into it, and I found a screening, and that screening was pretty hyped up when I got there, man. More people showed up for that movie 100% than they did Aquaman 2, but is it better than Aquaman 2? Yes. So a gang leader tries to keep a promise made to his dying friend and takes on the other criminal gangs. Now, like I said, from the filmmaker behind KGF Parts 1 and 2, I was very into those movies. I had a great time with them. Didn't know all that much about them. And in general, it's been a while since I've reviewed Indian cinema. I know Shah Rukh Khan has a brand new film out, Donkey. Let me know down below, is that movie worth watching and reviewing? But this was the prominent screening at my local theater. And let me tell you, when it comes to the action sequences and the way this movie is filmed in general, from the color palette to, really the epic nature of every punch and kick, but the vibe that I got from watching this movie was epic, grandiose, massive in scale. From the opening sequence, when, the character that we're kind of focused on is so subtle compared to the rest of the movie. You're just sitting and waiting in anticipation for him to unleash, and inevitably there is that, right? But to unleash the insanity that you're getting from the rest of the film and our lead, like I said, the most subtle part of the movie. But it reminds me of when Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad said, "I am the danger," and just that real gravitas in his voice. But there's also this like, all right, I know the guy's going to go off eventually. That's the vibe I'm getting from our main character all throughout this movie, and I enjoyed that vibe. I liked following him around. Now, the story in general, and we'll start here before we get into what I really enjoyed about this film, I believe the structure didn't do it a lot of favors. In the first act, the pacing is just a bit scrambled. I was trying to just kind of hone in on what's going on because you're getting a lot of characters and what they're involved in, but that's kind of scrambled, right? I appreciate the mystery to it, and the second half, starting about halfway through the second act, I started to pick up on what was going on. There's a mystery to it all. I appreciate that mystery, but it caused more confusion than intrigue, and I was sitting back, and when we get to that intermission, I'm thinking to myself, okay, are they going to answer all of my questions, and what's going on with the way this movie is pieced together? I got it after that, but what they try to do with this film is they set up the second film earlier in this movie, and then they explain what was happening in the first half of this film in the second half of this film, and it leaves you anticipating part two in a good way, absolutely, but I don't know if I love that structure. So that's kind of what threw me off about the movie. And I don't necessarily hate when a movie feels like a part one. We've gotten a lot of those this year, right? Dead Reckoning and Spider-Verse, but sometimes they don't do it in the best way. We just talked about Rebel Moon on this channel. I'm like, I don't like the way that was done. And I don't know if I love the way that this part one was done. But at the end of the day, you watch a movie like this to soak in the action, to soak in the characters. And while these side characters weren't built up in a way that I absolutely loved, I love our lead. Holy smokes.
I love you, I love you, I love you!
The first action sequence that we get, I'm getting 300 vibes, right? From the vividness of the color palette. There's also a bit of Michael Bay in there, just the contrast of the way it all looks. That's what's so special about this director is, he takes what could be a standard action sequence, and it kind of reminds me of John Wick too. It's like, yeah, we could film it in a way that's good and impactful, or we could spend hours and hours on rigging the camera and making this as epic as possible. So I really respect that. And that's one thing I love about Indian cinema is they don't just give you action sequences. They try to find ways to make them as creative as possible. And this director specifically with KGF and now this film, I'm thinking, yeah, this is just different. And to deliver that and then to deliver that within this experience and to go into a mostly packed theater, and I'm in the middle of Kentucky in the U.S. There's not a lot. You wouldn't think that this theater would be as packed as it actually was. I'm going to all of these other opening weekend movies, and yeah, there are people there, but not really. This movie was different, and the same thing with RRR last year, the same thing with KGF. Really, anytime there's a big event film, even the Dragon Ball movies, right? I just love when there's that camaraderie and experience. So, event films are good, but they're really good when they deliver phenomenal action sequences that when they make the audience stand up and cheer. I got a little bit of that as this movie was going, so that was really fun. In the first half, it holds those action sequences, but the second half, when the story really starts to come together and you're learning more about our main character specifically, and you're just waiting in anticipation for that to happen and for him to come out of that shell that they're building up in the beginning, that was really entertaining.
Now, this is epic.
I mentioned that Michael Bay look and feel. That's not a negative, by the way. That's positive. I think Michael Bay does action sequences well when it's not Transformers, but this doesn't feel like Transformers. This is not convoluted. But there's also this kind of smokiness to some of the background sequences to where it causes what's going on in the foreground to come to life. That was really cool. And like I said, the scope and the scale, it's massive. There's also a voiceover throughout this movie. And normally, and I say this all the time, it takes a lot for a voiceover to work. It all comes down to how it's a part of the storytelling and what it does for the audience. I think this voiceover was kind of integral. Yeah, it's going to lead to some exposition. There's a lot of exposition in the first half of this movie. And that's where I was feeling that disconnect. It's like, I do wish they would lighten up on that and show us instead of tell us. I do believe that's an issue concurrent throughout this movie. So in that way, I think the script needed a little bit of work, but the voiceover allows us to kind of figure out what's going on, but it also elevates those action sequences and builds up our main character to where that intrigue and mystery comes to life in the second half, or really in the third act of this movie. And when that comes to life, you're locked in from start to finish. And the entirety of the third act, I was really locked in because at that point, I knew what was going on, and I could just soak in the action. Before I give you my score, let me know down below, are you excited for part 2? What is your favorite film by this director? Is it KGF Part 1 or 2, this movie, or is there another one that I should check out? And should I see Donkey? Is it worth my time? Salaar is a massive and mostly intense blockbuster that features some insane action sequences. The storytelling causes some confusion on occasion, and there is exposition throughout, but it does feel more streamlined in the third act. I believe this is a fun time overall, and that's all I could ask for with a movie like this, one that I didn't know anything about other than the director. I think the cast does a nice job as well, over the top, but in a really fun way. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. If you want to support this video or this channel, dropping that thumbs up is the best way to do it, and stay tuned. Plenty more reviews to come, and my best movies of the year list next week. Hit that notification bell. Stay tuned. I'll see you guys soon.